We are getting our first look at some of the victims of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting on this Monday morning.
We'll get through this darkest day of Pittsburgh's history by working together.
The President of the United States tweeted this out. The fake news is doing everything in their power to blame Republicans, conservatives, and me for the division.
I think this president's whole modus operandi is to divide us.
The migrant caravan is on the move again this morning.
This is the caravan about an hour ago started, and they're going about 30 miles north.
This caravan is not getting in. There is a right way to emigrate to the United States, and this is not it.
There's really nothing irrational about Americans being concerned about thousands of people crossing the border not vetted.
Thousands fled the streets in Brazil overnight to celebrate the nation's new president-elect. Jair Bolsonaro, often compared to President Trump, promised to crack down on corruption and crime.
Do you want to run again?
No.
Wait.
No.
That was a pause. Well, I'd like to be president. Okay.
Red Sox win the World Series. 5-1 the final tonight. But we're just getting warmed up.
That's good. My hamstring's a little tight, but that's for another time. Fascinating. Thank you.
We were so worked up watching the game yesterday. Red Sox won. Congratulations to our friends up in Boston. Halloween is 2 days away, so get the costumes ready.
You got to get candy. That's right.
And then soon there'll be November 1st, and it'll be over.
Oh, man. It was
You're
fast.
right, Brian.
The time is marching on.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining us on this Monday. We have lots of news, and we're starting with this.
All right, we're starting to get our first look at some of the victims over at the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting over the weekend.
The victims range in age from 54 to 97. Among them, a married couple, a pair of brothers, their family calling them inseparable. There they are right there.
Also, David Lee Miller is in Pittsburgh. He's live there where the community is trying to pull together during this horrific ordeal. Good morning, David Lee.
Good morning. The U.S. attorney here says he is now starting the process to seek the death penalty for 46-year-old Robert Bowers. Authorities say early Saturday morning, Bowers shot and killed 11 people at the Tree of Life synagogue. And when committing mass murder, he shouted, quote, "I want to kill Jews." Bowers faces dozens of charges and will have his first appointment with a court later today. And for the first time, as you mentioned, some of the survivors are now speaking out. Survivors like Barry Werber, who witnessed the death of his friend.
Then the door up there opened, and we could see a shaft of light. And an officer in a SWAT outfit, a SWAT uniform, came down and got us out. And I had checked Mel's pulse before all of this, you know, after most of the shooting was done. He was gone. I could tell he was dead.
Outside the Tree of Life synagogue, there is now a makeshift memorial, 11 Jewish stars. They were put in place yesterday afternoon. A rabbi from the synagogue says this community will recover.
We will continue to thrive and sing and worship and learn together, but we will not be broken. We will not be ruined by this event.
In this tight-knit community, it seems almost everyone knew someone who was killed in this mass shooting. The authorities say that later today, Mr. Bowers is going to be in court before a federal magistrate. Meanwhile, the names of those who died were published on the front page of the local newspaper. As it has been said, death is a process, not a state. Back to you.
All right, David Lee Miller, appreciate it. It's just worth being said. I know we understand it, but for law enforcement, 1 minute you might be asked to give directions. The next minute you might be helping someone on the side of the road. The next minute you get a call and you're running into the hail of gunfire in a synagogue. And whatever you have with you, that's your defense. It's just amazing what law enforcement has to do on a regular basis.
And a number of them ran toward the gunfire, and a number of them were injured as well. When you look at what happened, there in Pittsburgh, it is just so disturbing because murder in a holy place. I mean, it was there for, I believe, a bris where so many innocents were gathered in prayer.
Steve, was it a naming ceremony? I think it was. Yeah, I think it was a
bris, I believe. And for them to be there in that place in prayer, gathered together, it's just so
unable to defend
jarring
themselves.
and awful. I mean, murder is always bad, but in the house of God.
You're right. President ordered the flags to fly at half-staff, and the president was speaking in Indiana, and he said he learned about this news of what happened at the synagogue, and he said, my word, before I speak, I would like to have a pastor, and I would like to have a rabbi on stage with me giving a prayer to the people who were listening. And the rabbi, both of them did a phenomenal job. The rabbi was on with us earlier, and this was his message, that Americans should still unite. We should unite against evil, but we should also rally around our God. Listen.
We're divided in many ways, it's true. But there are other ways in which we are united, and one of those ways is in our contempt for this sort of hatred, for this sort of senseless violence. The best way for us to counter this sort of thing is by making that clear, joining arms, whether it's literally or figuratively, and standing up against these acts of hatred.
So important to him to be there because he says, I normally don't answer the phone on the Sabbath. I don't drive my car. But the phone calls kept coming in from Washington, and he finally said, maybe there's an emergency. Let me take the call. He takes it, and it's the White House saying, can you please go and give this message? And so he drove over to meet the president.
I was just stunned to see how quick everyone was blaming the president and his tone for what happened. It's just crazy to make that leap and get politics into this. You know what? Here's an example.
At the center, an unapologetically incendiary president.
Our national political culture is motivating folks who are inspired by hate, by fear, by bigotry.
It's hard not to look at it and see that it is connected. We've seen this rise in sort of a hot political rhetoric.
I think this president's whole modus operandi is to divide us.
Not letting the Republican Party off the hook. They are the beneficiaries of racism in America, right?
All right, this guy was not a Trump supporter, first of all, and the vice president was asked about it on one of the Sunday shows, and he said people on both sides of the aisle use strong language about our political differences, but I just don't think you can connect it to threats or acts of violence, and I don't think the American people connect it.
Right. In our first hour, I quoted Howie Carr, who writes in the pages of the Boston Herald. He said this guy, the shooter, hated Trump. Because he thought the president was a globalist. He did not vote for him. He never owned a MAGA hat, and yet you saw that kind of reaction all day yesterday. The president did tweet this out. He said the fake news is doing everything in their power to blame Republicans, conservatives, and me for the division and hatred that has been going on for so long in our country. Actually, it is their fake and dishonest reporting which is causing problems far greater than they understand. We're going to talk to Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, about that at 7:30 this morning. But did you see, given the fact that the campaign continues, we're 8 days away from the midterm, there was a rally out in Tennessee, I believe in Nashville. It was Marsha Blackburn. She spoke for 11 minutes, but before she got started, she called for a moment of silence for the victims in Pennsylvania. And that is when somebody decided, you know what, this is a good time to do this. Watch.
A moment of silence. Marsha Blackburn is a white supremacist.
Unbelievable. If you have a point of view, obviously it's not Marsha Blackburn's. You did nothing to forward your cause. Well, you are being mocked on the left, and many, and Steve, you mentioned that Phil Bredesen did come out and condemn it, but he also said, hey, I've been interrupted multiple times. But what Democrat is happy with those scenes? That doesn't show courage. It shows you're absolutely oblivious. Keep in mind, in terms of these midterms, I get it. There's 8 million have already voted. It's the largest early voter turnout that we've ever had. It looks as though we're going to have the greatest turnout since 1914. That's all great news for the country that we're taking part in the process. This is not taking part of the process.
Of those protests we saw, there was only one during the moment of silence. And afterwards, Marsha Blackburn said, how despicable that you cannot even have a moment of silence. In all, for instance, that person right there, 7 protesters were forcibly removed from this particular rally for Marsha Blackburn. Lindsey Graham was in attendance, and there you can see one of the protesters, as you can see, tangling with a cop.
Well, I don't think the majority of Americans would agree with these protests. I'm glad that her opponent spoke out against it, even though he came out and said a lot of people have shouted at me during my rallies, but not during a moment of silence for the Jewish people, for the 11 people that were killed in that synagogue. The Jewish people have been through enough, have been through so much, and they deserve the respect of the country. During a moment of silence, this protester should not have stood up and calling her a white supremacist.
Dan Bongino had this observation.
We're supposed to take civility lessons from this radical far left. It's a fringe group of people that do really dumb things. But I expect today the Democrat Party, and especially the Democrats in Tennessee, where that race is happening, to loudly denounce this kind of absurd, outrageous behavior in the name of civility. This happens all the time. That's just the wrong thing to do.
I just a quick note to also on the midterms. The president's going to be quite busy. It was been pointed out that he's not going to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan with their House races on. And Jonathan Swan writes, I think the president's given up on the House. I don't think any Republican has given up on the House at all. I think that's the wrong
the president's
message.
saying, even though I'm not on the ballot, go to the polls. Please go vote. How could he say that?
Because he's focusing on Senate races, not House races. Well, there are certain areas where the president's not going to help, where it's a very moderate area.
We're going to talk to Tom Bevan from Real Clear Politics about the races here in about 5 minutes. But in the meantime, it's 7:11 and time for some news.
Yes, it is good Monday morning following a number of stories, including this Fox News alert. Human remains just found in a horrific plane crash in Indonesia. The Lion Air flight plunging 5,000 feet into the sea. The pilot on the brand new plane reported technical difficulties just minutes after takeoff before falling off radar. The exact location of the plane wreck is still unknown. All 189 people on board are believed to be dead. That same plane experienced a technical problem on its last flight. A suspect is in custody, accused of shooting and killing an active-duty Navy sailor. Police say Brandon Acuna opened fire on Curtis Adams on a San Diego interstate. Adams had just pulled over to try and help Acuna, who he thought was stranded on the side of the road. The men did not know each other. Acuna is also accused in another shooting and attempted burglary. Thousands fled the streets of Brazil overnight to celebrate the Trump of the tropics, Jair Bolsonaro becoming the first conservative elected president in nearly 30 years. The far-right candidate, often compared to President Trump, has promised to crack down on corruption and crime. The president has already called Bolsonaro to congratulate him. Well, they did it again. The Boston Red Sox winning their 4th World Series since 2004.
Red Sox win the World Series. 5-1 the final tonight.
The Sox finishing off the LA Dodgers 5-1 in Game 5, but manager Alex Cora hasn't decided if the Red Sox will make the traditional championship visit to the White House just yet. Several athletes and some teams have declined invites to the Capitol in the past as a form of political protest. So we'll certainly see when they make that announcement.
We will indeed. All right, Jillian,
Thanks,
thank
Jillian.
you. All right, appreciate it. Meanwhile, 8 days to go into the midterms, and our next guest says there are 3 key Senate races that are ones to watch.
Plus, actor Matthew McConaughey gives first responders a surprise that they never saw coming.
Plus, every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7 at Channel 115.
With just over a week to go before the November midterms, races are heating up across the country as Republicans battle to maintain control of both houses of Congress. So what is the Republicans' most likely path to a House majority, and which races could determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate? Here to discuss, somebody who knows all that stuff, Real Clear Politics co-founder and president, Tom Bevan. Tom, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
It's too close to call right now, right?
I mean, I think definitely this is going to be, we're going to be up late on election night, particularly in the House, but it's absolutely it's going to be a battle, and we'll see what happens. And both sides seem very, very energized. Turnouts, off the charts.
All right.
So it's going to be exciting.
Let's take a look at Indiana, Mike Pence's home state. Right now, Joe Donnelly is losing to Mike Braun by about a point. Joe Donnelly has been a very popular figure in politics out there. Is this surprising to you?
No, we haven't had a ton of polling in this race, and we were waiting to see some more data because it seemed like, Donnelly's vote against Kavanaugh was going to play in that race. We've seen a lot of energy expended there. You mentioned Mike Pence has been there. Joe Biden's been there for the Democrats. But the latest poll shows Braun moving ahead, which put him ahead in our Real Clear Politics average, although by less than 1 percentage point. So it's close, but it seems like Republicans may have a little bit of momentum in Indiana.
All right, let's look at Missouri. Claire McCaskill right now is down by 2 to the Attorney General, Josh Hawley.
Same situation. Not a lot of data coming out of Missouri, but we did see a poll that has Hawley up 4, which is a 3-point bump from their poll last week. And that moved him ahead in our Real Clear Politics average by about 2 points. So it's a tough race. Claire McCaskill's obviously always tough to beat in Missouri for Republicans. They haven't been able to do it, but it looks like she's really up against it this year in a way that she has been in the past.
All right, up on the big board in Arizona, the Senate race, you've got Sinema just slightly behind Martha McSally. This has been neck and neck.
This has been neck and neck for a long, long time. We have had a recent poll there put Sinema up by 3 points. And McSally's up in our average, but not by much, by less than a point. So this is a coin toss, which is interesting because the governor's race is not much of a competition. Doug Ducey's running away with it, but it's not giving McSally, not lifting her the way that you might have expected. So this race is really, really close.
And when it comes to the House Republicans need to win all the districts that Donald Trump won in 2016, right?
If they do that, they'll pick up a couple of Democratic seats, and they'll be able to hold. We have 30 toss-up races in our Real Clear Politics rankings right now. And if Republicans can hold on to 18 of those, they will hold the House. There's about 5 toss-up seats in California. There are a handful in Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois. And then we got a couple races in upstate New York. Some of those are districts that Trump won in 2016, and some of them are districts that Clinton won in 2016. But if Republicans, if they win 18 of those 30 toss-up seats, they'll keep control of the House.
And the one thing that Tom Bevan does predict is going to be a late night on Tuesday, the midterm election night. Tom Bevan, thank you very much for joining us today from Chicago.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right, straight ahead, Rod Rosenstein's closed-door meeting on Capitol Hill has been delayed, but now he could be grilled in public. Andy McCarthy here with the reaction coming up.
Michael Bloomberg's Political Action Committee just dropped at the last minute on Democratic House races ahead of the midterms. The former New York City mayor is considering 2020 for a presidential run. And next, more than $300,000. That is how much the city of San Francisco just spent trying to register non-citizens to vote. But just 49 people signed up to cast ballots. Illegal immigrants can only vote in school board races in that city. And finally, 7,000. That is how many Marines almost drank all the beer in Iceland. The troops bar hopping in the capital city ahead of a major NATO military drill. Local reports say bar owners had to make emergency trips to suppliers to keep up with their demand. 7,000 beers. Brian, down to you.
25 minutes after the hour. Thanks, Ainsley. Rod Rosenstein calling off the meeting on Capitol Hill last week, avoiding questions about those reports that he wanted to secretly record the president. Now, one lawmaker revealing we may all be getting answers very soon. Listen.
This is more likely going to be a public hearing where more members of Congress will be able to ask some of the questions that I just raised directly to the Deputy Attorney General. I don't think it's likely to happen in the next week before the midterms, but I know that, hopefully the sooner the better.
He wanted 30 minutes, and just on that 25th Amendment, he did not want other questions, and he was going to get them. Here to weigh in is Fox News contributor and former U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy. Andy, are you surprised Rod Rosenstein punted, and what do you think he's up to?
Well, I'm not surprised he punted. I thought that, with due respect to Representative Ratcliffe, to say that one of the reasons it was put off is that Rosenstein, didn't realize that the questioning was going to be about the Russia investigation. I mean, what do you think they wanted to talk to him about? The weather? Of course he knew it was about the Russia investigation. He's trying to put this off, as he has been, beyond the midterms. And then the idea will be, Brian, that if the Democrats take the House, people will say, and the Justice Department will say, no point having a big hearing during a lame duck session of Congress, and then the Democrats will be running the place and there won't be a hearing.
However, on the Senate side, Judiciary Committee Chairman, most likely to replace Grassley, will be Lindsey Graham. He is not letting up. He is just he's as exercised on this as Radcliffe is.
Yeah, well, I think, Brian, that probably one of the most important and least talked about pieces of reporting from Capitol Hill that we've had in this whole investigation is what Senator Grassley and Senator Graham, that report that they put out about the FISA application, which gave us insight into it. These are the FISA applications against the former Trump campaign advisor, Carter Page. That gave us more insight into FISA abuse than anything that we had seen to that point.
And now the Papadopoulos revelations are jarring, unbelievable thinking, and there's too much to get into now. We'll have you back. You wrote a column that floored me about Europe bowing to Sharia, and they basically have to get permission to have free speech. What are you talking about?
Well, they don't have free speech in Europe, you know, Brian. They don't have a First Amendment. They've never had it. It's always been easier in Europe to regulate speech. But what they've now done is adopted Sharia blasphemy standards. So you had a woman in Austria who tried to talk about some tenets of Islamic history and Islamic law, including the fact that Muhammad married a very young girl, and that's, you know, sacred scripture attests to that. And even though it's true, she was told that she couldn't speak about it because it might foment religious hatred and discord. So basically, you don't have free speech in Europe. What you have is whatever speech the government decides they will indulge, provided that it doesn't cause, you know, discord and unrest.
Where is it trending? Where is it trending? Towards more openness or more closeness?
No, it's trending toward not only more closeness, but this is the Muslim Brotherhood plan. It always has been. You set up these enclaves in the West. You demand of the host country that they allow you to run your affairs according to Sharia. And over time, you push the society to adopt Sharia standards. It's exactly what they've been doing. I feel like I'm a broken record. I've been saying this for, 10 years, but it is what it is.
Right. And then you'll see how popular it is in Europe to see who gets elected, because sooner or later, when things have to change, they do. Right now, they're on that road as Angela Merkel got another rebuke yesterday in an election against her party. And a lot of people say it goes back to the immigrants that she allowed to flood in by the millions 5 years ago. Andy McCarthy, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pick up his column,
Thanks,
National
Brian.
Review. You got it. Straight ahead, President Trump with a message after the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh.
The scourge of anti-Semitism cannot be ignored, cannot be tolerated, and it cannot be allowed to continue.
Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway, here to react.
Is an assault on all of us. It will require all of us working together to extract the hateful poison of anti-Semitism from our world. The scourge of anti-Semitism cannot be ignored, cannot be tolerated, and it cannot be allowed to continue.
Well, that's the President of the United States at a rally on Saturday night. He said he did not cancel the rally because he said if he did, it would make sick, demented people important.
He did have a pastor and he had a rabbi up on stage with him, called them just before he headed over to Indiana to give a message to the people and a prayer.
And keep in mind, Ainsley, when Benghazi happened, we didn't even know who was alive, who was dead, and who perpetrated the crime. And President Obama flew across the country to a Las Vegas rally. So for those people who want to condemn the president for doing a normal rally that was already on the schedule, there you go. Meanwhile, 26 minutes after the hour, let's bring in Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president. Kellyanne, first off, this weekend, a horrific, on the heels of the bomber and the mystery behind it. Thankfully, no blasting caps, so nothing was exploding, but the bombing-making materials. We have this synagogue shooting. Bring us inside the White House. How did you hear? What did you do?
Well, it's very important is what the president has done. He denounced anti-Semitism in all forms. He said we must rise above this evil. He's called for the death penalty for this murderer in Pittsburgh who gunned down 11 innocent people because of their faith. And he said the word and anti-Semitism, anti-Semite, any number of times. And that's really the lesson from Pittsburgh, everyone. I can't believe on these shows yesterday and over the weekend, people are politicians pointing the finger, media making it about themselves. Cut it out and recognize that this man went in there to, quote, kill Jews. And that has got to be the lesson. It's certainly a lesson to my down because of their faith, because of their Jewish faith. And a year and a half earlier, Steve Scalise almost lost his life crawling across the outfield in his own blood because that person was coming there to, quote, hunt Republicans. You've got to call it what it is. This president is asking us to rise above it and asking us to come together and unify as a nation. And anybody who's saying he isn't listening.
Well, you know what they were saying yesterday, Kellyanne? They were saying that the president's rhetoric was responsible for the rise of political violence, just raising the temperature in America.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And I went back and looked at a big compilation of comments that are made on other cable networks routinely. The chyrons, the comments. I won't even repeat the insults because it gives them oxygen and gives them much higher ratings that they would also otherwise get in their own shows. But the kind of rhetoric that is said day in and day out about this White House, the people who work here, the president, the vice president, their families, it's got to stop. And this president, every time there's been a major crisis or shooting or natural disaster, has shown up. He has spoken out about it, and he has always called on us to unify. And anybody who's not listening, I mean, look, Marsha Blackburn asks for a moment of silence in the middle of a political rally, and people are screaming during the moment of silence, screaming, by the way, epithets and things that aren't true about her, and yet being disrespectful to the 11 people who lost their lives. You've got people constantly making comments about Nazism, Nazi Germany. This president is turning us into, somebody from CNN tweeted out a picture of concentration camps when the migrants were trying to come over the border earlier this year. That's got to stop. And then we have 11 dead men and women. Their names should be lifted up today. You want a lesson from all this? Teach your kids about anti-Semitism, the evil in the world, because they were Jewish, and remember their names and their service. I love reading about these people. That's what needs to be done today. But, you know, the media brings themselves into everything. It's always about them, and it's always about President Trump. In this case, the president is leading the country to heal. And he said it many times during that speech. They complain, they don't like the way he pronounced the word. They don't like how he said it. It was 5 minutes too late. He should have said it on Twitter first. It was 18 seconds too early than what they expected. Cut it out and listen carefully because everybody else is listening.
I like what you said about learning about these people. Daniel Stein was 71. He had just become a grandfather.
Of service.
Yeah, you had a husband and a wife, 86-year-old and 84-year-old. They were married in the Squirrel Hill synagogue. You had two brothers that were inseparable. So many stories about all the things they had done to help other people. One guy did taxes for a living as an accountant, and he did another girl's taxes every year and never charged his family. So good people, and we do need to remember them.
Keep reading them. And by the way, Ainsley, and I know you understand this very well, the anti-religiosity in this country, that it's somehow in vogue and funny to make fun of anybody of faith, to constantly be making fun of people who express religion, the late-night comedians, the unfunny people on TV shows. It's always anti-religious. And remember, these people were gunned down in their place of worship, as were the people in South Carolina several years ago. And they were there because they're people of faith. And it's that faith that needs to bring us together. This is no time to be driving God out of the public square. No time to be making fun of people. That's right.
All right, Kellyanne, I want to bring you to another topic. President Obama going off and mocking President Trump and others that are concerned about the caravan and the other caravan and others who are storming our borders. We're getting, what, 1,000 a day? He says, now the latest, they're trying to convince everybody to be afraid of a bunch of impoverished, malnourished refugees 1,000 miles away. That's the thing, it's the most important thing in this election. So he's saying he's mocking those who are concerned about impoverished people coming to our border. What do you say to that?
I have no idea why President Obama is out there running these campaigns the way he is. I'm glad he is, because it looks a lot like 2016 when his message was all about Donald Trump. Probably helped to turn up the turnout for Donald Trump in 2016, so thanking him for that. But he's not out there bragging about Obamacare. He's not out there bragging about his tax cuts and his deregulation and him going to meet with Kim Jong-un and get the remains of our fallen from North Korea. He's not out there talking about the denuclearization. He's not out there punishing, sanctioning Russians and punishing Assad when he gasses his people twice. It took him many, many years to make his first trip to Israel. It took this president 4 months into his first term. So let's compare the two presidents any day of the week. Let's focus on what this caravan is and what it is not. The Secretary of Homeland Security was out yesterday on your network talking about the fact that people who are coming here illegal are not going to be allowed in, that we are a generous nation where 33 million people have immigrated legally to this country over the years. You can stand in line, you can file the paperwork, you can immigrate here legally. And if you have a credible fear of asylum, that is considered. But because of these ridiculous court decisions and the inaction, the complete fecklessness and recklessness of the Democrats up on Capitol Hill, we have this crisis. President Obama in 2005 rolled the tape. Boy, different tune then when he was thinking of running for president. Senator Obama talked about illegals cannot come here across the border. We're going to punish any employers who hire illegals. He went on and on and on. Different tune now. But it is fascinating that Donald Trump still lives rent-free in his head, and he's not out there bragging about Obamacare. He's trying to force Medicare for all, which means less Medicare for seniors, and socialized medicine on everyone.
Kellyanne, before you go, 8 days to the midterms, what's the president going to do to keep Republicans in charge of both houses?
The question is, what is the president not going to do? He's just going to barnstorm the country, many different rallies, about 10 or 12 rallies left, multiple stops a day in this last week while he's being president of the United States, his first and foremost responsibility. And he's going to leave it all in the field, run through the tape like he did in 2016, and he's going to go out there and say, I want this person to be in the United States Senate or in the House of Representatives because we have to keep this great economy going, where this is just a down payment on the peace and prosperity that you've seen in the first 2 years. So we know 43 retirements in the House. That's a big hole to dig out of. But the president's going to make it possible. No nonpartisan, sane prognosticator right now is predicting the 63 House seat losses that President Obama suffered in his first midterms in 2010, or even the 54. And by the way, in the last 80 years, I'm told only about 8 Senate seats have gone to the party in power in a midterm election. Everybody knows that the Republicans are going to hold the Senate and probably add to it if you look at all the news reports. So they're going to defy. He's a guy who defies the trends. He's a guy who makes history, doesn't repeat history, and you'll probably see that next Tuesday as well.
Reports that you've given up on the House, true or false?
The president hasn't given up on the House. Of course he wouldn't do that. And some of us I'm being dispatched out on my personal time. The president is out there. The vice president is out there campaigning for House members as well as Senate seats. So people just say that because they hope it's true. Remember, and today's a great day to remind everybody, just because you say it, just because you print it, just because you tweet it, just because you vomit it in talking points all day long on other cable stations doesn't make it true.
All right. A lot of fake news out there. Thanks, Kellyanne. Great to see you this morning.
Have a great day.
Thanks. 10 to 12 more rallies and 8 days left. He's working hard.
He's going to be busy.
All right, you just heard the White House react to the caravan. Up next, we're going to go out to Griff Jenkins. He's live down in Mexico reporting with the caravan.
Plus, Arizona Congresswoman and Senate candidate Martha McSally is going to be joining us. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Tomi Lahren talking about Fox Nation right here on Fox and Friends.
Hope you're having a good morning. Welcome back. We have some headlines now. Beto O'Rourke refusing to acknowledge he's trailing Senator Ted Cruz in the polls. When asked about it, O'Rourke says, quote, I wouldn't concede that we're down. I think a lot of the people we're seeing and visiting and showing up for are not reflected in anyone's polls. According to Real Clear Politics, the Texas Democrat does trail in his Senate race against the incumbent Cruz by nearly 7 points. Actor Matthew McConaughey honoring some of our country's finest.
So that's it. We just want to shake another. Appreciate it.
The Texas native surprising the Houston police and fire departments with lunch for National First Responders Day. He also met with 911 dispatchers. The actor and his team from Wild Turkey Bourbon also donated $10,000 to our friends at Team Rubicon, an organization that helps veterans become first responders. So safe to say he made their day. All right, all right, all right.
Absolutely.
The firefighters are like, thanks for the lunch, but we want you to bring us some bourbon too, right?
Meanwhile, switching gears, a Fox News alert, the migrant caravan is back on the move on this Monday morning.
All right, thousands of people marching on closer towards the U.S. after stalling over rising tensions and a problem with a child.
Griff Jenkins is embedded with the migrant caravan down in the southern part of Mexico. He joins us live as he's traveling north with them. Griff?
Yeah, guys, we've gotten just a little bit ahead of the caravan because they're traveling to the next town, Zenatepec, but you can see the ones that were sort of hitchhiking, catching rides, these migrants on the side of the road, trying to jump on any truck they can, anyone they can. There's actually a little diner here that's opened up. A few of them apparently have a little bit of pesos because they're getting coffee and that sort of thing, but as you see on the road, they'll try and hop on any car that'll take them. Now, they're going north. Those cars are actually coming south, so they don't want on those. They're waiting on one going that way. But, you know, we're able to speak with one of the migrants, Dylan Funes, Lennon Funes, and he talked about why he wants to get back there for a work permit, but he doesn't want to do it the legal way. Take a listen.
I live in USA for like 20 years. I get my work permit for every year in New York, and they told me no más in USA because your paperwork expired.
Why don't you just do it the legal way and apply for another work permit in Guatemala instead of getting in the caravan?
And they say no, because no más. You live in USA for 20 years, so no más.
You continue to the U.S.
I want to go back to USA.
Okay, and as you can see here, they're coming along, and this is very quickly, I just want to show you, this is how they're trying to travel. The ones that don't want to walk, they want to jump on any vehicle that'll take them, and they put as many as they can as they head to the next town. The next ultimate destination for today, Zenatepec, a town of 4,000, and there's more than 4,000 migrants, so they'll be exactly as large or not bigger than the actual population of the town, guys.
Wow.
On the move with the caravan. All right, Griff, thank you very much.
And slightly ahead. Meanwhile, 10 minutes before the top of the hour, Al Sharpton slamming President Trump for hosting young black conservatives at the White House.
It was not a summit. It was a Make America Great rally. They used some young blacks as props, which really is an insult to them.
Really? Our next guest helped organize the event and says Sharpton should be ashamed of himself. We'll explain, or he'll explain. She'll explain.
But first, we're bringing Breakfast with Friends to Fox Square. If you're planning to be in New York City tomorrow, join us Tuesday, October 30th, as we invite you into the kitchen. We've got a great breakfast.
Steve, are you making it?
No, I'm not. We've got some professionals.
That's right. We're going to be cooking for you all morning long on the Fox Square. Back in 2 minutes.
Is back on the move this morning.
Thousands of people marching on up to the United States after stalling over rising tensions.
Griff Jenkins is embedded with the migrant caravan in southern Mexico. He joins us live as he travels north with them. Griff, I was reading that yesterday there was kind of a pause, but today they're taking off again, aren't they?
They are. Good morning, guys. You can see them behind me. This is the caravan about an hour ago started in the town of San Pedro Tepanetepec, and they're going about 30 miles north to the town of Zenatepec. And what's interesting is we are standing here at an immigration checkpoint between those two towns. You can see they're just not checking anything. They're just letting them pass and go about their business. What's interesting is the little town of Zenatepec, where they're going, has a population of 4,000. And so the caravan, by conservative estimates, is still 4,000 or 5,000 strong. So it's literally the size of the town. And we've talked a little bit with some of the officials, the national Mexican sort of health officials, saying that they're worried with these small towns that they won't have the resources they need. You see them going by. Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás? Yeah. ¿Cómo se llama? Griff? Yeah. ¿Qué piensas de oferta de México y el presidente Peña Nieto?
Que se ha portado bien con nosotros.
No. ¿Vaya a Estados Unidos?
Sí.
See. Okay, so that's just a very quick thing. You know, they don't want the offer of Mexico to get some asylum in these southern states of Oaxaca, where we are, Chiapas, where we were before. They were going to Mexico City, where some may decide to stay, although there is no offer from the government there. But most say they're going to go to the United States, despite the constant admonitions from Secretary Nielsen, President Trump, and the administration, as General Mattis puts resources on the border. But you can see they're coming. They're strong. They had a day of rest yesterday. And yesterday, it was very interesting, guys. Over the weekend, we saw the group trying to police themselves because a big fight broke out over food. Food is scarce, and they were telling people to also clean up so that they don't get a bad reputation for littering in these small towns, guys.
That's exactly right. All right, Griff, who is live with the caravan down in Mexico, we thank you very much. As we learned last week from Griff, the caravan starts early before the sun is up because it is so hot there. They're trying to get a start on the day before the really hot weather rolls in.
Well, I'll tell you, he's hot under the collar, but he's in an air-conditioned studio. Dan Bongino joins us right now, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, author of the brand-new book, Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. Dan, welcome. We see the caravan out there, and I was just stunned to see President Obama just mocking the fact that we are looking at this caravan with a sense of concern, as if we feel as though the nation's going to be overrun by what he terms underprivileged or poor people. That's not the point, and he knows it.
Yeah, he does know it, and that's what's deeply disturbing about this, Brian. There's really nothing irrational about Americans, tax-paying Americans, being concerned about thousands of people crossing the border not vetted. I mean, that we're having this conversation is almost strange, that we're being painted as irrational ones. You know, I was listening to you earlier in the show, and you brought up just a simple statistical point that's irrefutable. A significant percentage, maybe not a majority of, but a significant percentage of people entering on any given day are going to be stopped at the border for some kind of narco trafficking, criminal activity, or otherwise. It's not a majority, it's not an overwhelming amount, but it's enough for us to be concerned. Therefore, by simple numbers, if thousands of people enter unvetted at any time, you're going to have people enter the country that shouldn't be here. That's not a fear tactic, that's just the truth, and I'm glad you brought that up.
What about diseases? I mean, there's a reason why you can't bring a kid to school unless he's inoculated. You know, there's things that happen in this country. We already give 40 to 50%